The abandoned mining station on Kepler 442c had been silent for 3 months when Captain Sarah Chan received the distress beacon. It wasn't a human signal, the frequency and modulation patterns marked it as distinctly alien. Most species in the known galaxy would have ignored such a transmission, especially from a world marked as a Zephyrian military zone. But humans had a peculiar habit of investigating cries for help, regardless of their origin. "Captain, that signal is coming from inside the restricted perimeter," Lieutenant Rodriguez warned as their exploration vessel Prometheus approached the planet's rust-colored surface. Zephyrian Command marked this entire system as off-limits after their withdrawal. Sarah studied the readings on her console. The Zephyrians were known throughout the galaxy as ruthless warriors, a species that had conquered dozens of worlds through superior technology and an army of bioengineered warbeasts. Their sudden retreat from this mining operation had puzzled military analysts for months. Abandoned Zephyrian installations were typically destroyed rather than left intact. "The signal's definitely a distress call," reported Dr. James Park, their xenobiologist, his fingers dancing across his analysis equipment. "It's repeating every 37 seconds, and the pattern suggests extreme duress. Whatever's sending it is in serious trouble." The team exchanged glances. First contact protocols demanded they report such discoveries to Earth Command, but the nearest communication relay was 6 days away. By then, whatever was sending the signal would likely be dead. "Sir, I'm detecting massive biosignatures in the main facility," announced Ensign Kim from her sensor station. "The readings are unusual. It's definitely organic, but the size is enormous. We're talking about something the size of a small building." Sarah made her decision with the characteristic human impulse that had both baffled and impressed other species throughout their brief time in galactic society. "Prep the shuttle. We're going down." The surface of Kepler 442c was a desolate landscape of red sand and twisted metal structures. The Zephyrian mining complex sprawled across several kilometers, its biomechanical architecture a disturbing blend of grown and constructed materials. Most of the facility appeared damaged, with several buildings showing signs of weapons fire and explosive damage. As their shuttle touched down near the source of the signal, the team could see the devastation more clearly. Zephyrian war machines lay scattered across the compound, their organic components already beginning to decompose in the alien atmosphere. Whatever had happened here, it had been violent and complete. "Atmospheric readings are stable," Dr. Park reported as they prepared to disembark. "Gravity's about 0.8 Earth normal. We can operate here safely, but I'd recommend keeping our weapons ready. Zephyrian sites are notorious for security measures." The distress signal grew stronger as they approached the main facility. The building itself was a masterwork of Zephyrian bioarchitecture, its walls pulsing with a faint bioluminescent network that suggested the structure was still partially alive. Massive blast doors had been torn open, revealing the facility's dark interior. "The signal's coming from deeper inside," Kim reported, consulting her handheld scanner. "About 200 meters down, in what appears to be the main containment area." They moved through the facility with practiced caution, their flashlights revealing the alien workings of Zephyrian technology. The walls were lined with empty holding cells, each designed to contain something large and dangerous. Broken chains and twisted metal bars suggested that whatever had been kept here had not gone quietly. The smell hit them first, a mixture of decay, fear, and something else that Dr. Park couldn't immediately identify. As they descended deeper into the facility, the distress signal became almost overwhelming, a desperate plea that seemed to vibrate through their bones. "Jesus," whispered Rodriguez as their lights illuminated the main containment chamber. "What the hell is that?" In the center of the vast room, surrounded by the remains of heavy restraints and monitoring equipment, lay something that defied easy description. The creature was massive, easily 15 meters in length, with a body that seemed to blend reptilian and mammalian characteristics. Its hide was a deep blue-black color, marked with intricate patterns that seemed to shift in the light. 6 powerful legs ended in claws that could tear through steel, while a long, flexible neck supported a head that combined intelligence with predatory efficiency. But it was the creature's condition that struck the humans most forcefully. The being was clearly dying. Its breathing was labored and irregular, its body covered with wounds that spoke of prolonged torture and experimentation. Electrodes still protruded from its skull, connected to monitoring equipment that continued to record its vital signs even as they slowly declined. "The signal's coming from it," Dr. Park said quietly, his medical training overriding his fear. "It's telepathic. The distress call isn't electronic, it's psychic. Sarah approached slowly, her hands empty and visible. The creature's eyes, large, intelligent, and filled with pain, tracked her movement. There was something in that gaze that transcended species barriers, a desperate hope that perhaps, finally, someone had come who might help rather than harm. "Can you understand us?" Sarah asked, feeling somewhat foolish but compelled to try. "We're not Zephyrians. We're humans. We received your distress call." The creature's response was immediate and overwhelming. A wave of emotion crashed over the humans: gratitude, disbelief, desperate hope, and an intelligence that was clearly sapient. But underneath it all was pain, so much pain that Dr. Park staggered under its weight. "It's dying," he gasped, pulling out his medical scanner. "These wounds, the neural damage from whatever they were doing to it. I don't know if we can help." The creature tried to lift its head, and Sarah could see the tremendous effort it cost. Through the psychic link, images flooded their minds, memories of being bred for war, of battles across distant worlds, of blind obedience to Zephyrian masters who saw their warbeasts as nothing more than weapons to be used and discarded. But there were other memories too. Flashes of a homeworld with violet skies and crystal forests. A sense of family, of belonging to something greater than warfare. The creature had once been more than just a weapon, it had been a person, with thoughts and feelings and dreams that the Zephyrians had systematically tried to erase. "Look at this," Rodriguez called from across the chamber, his voice tight with anger. "Medical records. They were experimenting on it, trying to enhance its aggression and reduce its intelligence. They were turning it into a mindless killing machine. The files made for horrific reading." The creature, designated as Asset 7741, had been subjected to months of psychological conditioning, surgical modification, and neural manipulation. The Zephyrians had been trying to create the perfect war beast, utterly loyal, completely aggressive, and incapable of independent thought. But Asset 7741 had resisted. Despite everything they had done to it, some core of its original self had survived. The distress signal was proof of that, a final, desperate attempt to reach out for help before its tormentors finally broke its spirit completely. "We have to help it," Sarah said, though she wasn't sure how. Their medical supplies were designed for human physiology, and the creature's alien biology presented challenges they weren't equipped to handle. Dr. Park was already setting up his field medical kit, his face grim with determination. "I can try to stabilize it, but we'll need to get it to the ship. Our medical bay has better equipment, and I can run a full bioanalysis there." The creature seemed to understand their intentions. Through the psychic link, it projected a series of images: the facility's layout, the location of medical supplies, and, most importantly, the knowledge that the Zephyrians had planned to return within days to complete their experiments. "It's warning us," Kim realized. "The Zephyrians didn't abandon this place. They're coming back." Sarah felt her resolve harden. Throughout human history, her species had shown a remarkable capacity for defending the helpless, even at great cost to themselves. This situation was no different, regardless of the fact that the victim was an alien war beast from a hostile military force. "Rodriguez, get back to the ship and prep the cargo bay for medical containment. Kim, help me search for those medical supplies. Dr. Park, do whatever you can to stabilize our friend here." As her team sprang into action, Sarah knelt beside the massive creature's head. Its eyes followed her movements, and she could feel the waves of confusion and hope radiating from its mind. No one had ever shown it kindness before. The concept was alien to its experience. "We're going to get you out of here," she promised, not knowing if the creature could understand her words but hoping it could sense her intent. "I don't know what the Zephyrians did to you, but you're not alone anymore." The creature's response was a complex mix of emotions: gratitude, disbelief, and something that might have been the beginning of trust. It had spent so long believing that it was nothing more than a weapon, a tool to be used by its creators. The idea that someone might value its life, might see it as worth saving, was revolutionary. Dr. Park worked quickly, using a combination of human medical techniques and improvised solutions based on the creature's physiology. The alien medical supplies they found helped, though many were designed for inflicting rather than healing damage. It was clear that the Zephyrians viewed their war beasts as expendable resources, not living beings deserving of care. "Its vital signs are stabilizing," Dr. Park reported after an hour of intensive work. "But it's still in critical condition. We need to move it soon." The challenge of actually moving a 15-meter-long alien war beast to their shuttle seemed insurmountable until the creature itself provided the solution. Despite its weakened state, it managed to communicate through the psychic link that it could still move under its own power, at least for short distances. The journey to the shuttle was agonizingly slow. The creature, which they had begun thinking of as Titan due to its size, struggled with each step. Its legs shook with the effort, and, several times it nearly collapsed. But, each time, Sarah and her team were there to offer support, both physical and emotional. For Titan, their assistance was a revelation. Throughout its existence, any sign of weakness had been met with punishment or abandonment. The Zephyrians had no tolerance for defective war beasts. But, these humans stayed beside it, encouraged it, and never showed anything but patience and concern. Loading Titan into the shuttle's cargo bay required creative engineering and all of their combined strength. The creature barely fit, its massive form taking up most of the available space. But they managed, and soon the shuttle was lifting off from the abandoned facility. As they rose into the rust-colored sky, Sarah looked back at the Zephyrian complex below. Somewhere in those files was information about Titan's origins, its species, and perhaps others like it. The knowledge that there might be more beings suffering similar fates weighed heavily on her mind. "Captain," Dr. Park called from where he was monitoring Titan's condition, "I'm reading some unusual neural activity. I think it's trying to communicate something important." Sarah moved to Titan's head, placing her hand gently on its scale hide. Immediately, her mind was flooded with images and concepts that took her breath away. Titan was showing her memories of its homeworld, but, more than that, it was sharing the locations of other Zephyrian facilities, other war beasts being held in similar conditions. The creature had been moved between multiple sites during its captivity. It had seen others of its kind, beings who had been subjected to the same brutal conditioning and experimentation. Some had broken under the pressure, becoming the mindless weapons the Zephyrians desired. Others, like Titan, had somehow maintained their sense of self despite everything done to them. "There are more," Sarah whispered, the weight of that knowledge settling on her shoulders. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds, scattered across Zephyrian facilities throughout this sector. She could feel Titan's hope growing stronger as it realized that these humans might be willing to help others beyond just itself. The concept was almost too wonderful to believe, a species that would risk danger to save beings they had never met, simply because it was the right thing to do. As the Prometheus came into view ahead of them, Sarah made a decision that would have far-reaching consequences. They wouldn't just save Titan, they would expose what the Zephyrians were doing and find a way to help the other war beasts as well. It was a dangerous path, one that would put them in direct conflict with one of the galaxy's most powerful military forces. But it was the human thing to do, and Sarah had never been more proud of her species' stubborn refusal to abandon those in need, regardless of the cost. The medical bay of the Prometheus had never been designed to accommodate a patient of Titan's size, but human ingenuity and determination found a way. Dr. Park worked around the clock, assisted by the ship's advanced medical AI and a growing understanding of Titan's unique physiology. The creature's recovery was slow but steady. More importantly, as its physical condition improved, the psychic link between Titan and the crew grew stronger. What began as simple emotional communication evolved into something approaching true conversation. Through this link, they learned Titan's real name, a complex harmonic concept that roughly translated to Seeker of Distant Storms. They learned of its people, a species called the Kythera, who had been conquered by the Zephyrians 2 centuries ago. The strongest and most intelligent of the Kythera had been taken for the War Beast program, while the rest had been enslaved or eliminated. Seekers shared memories of its homeworld, vast crystal forests that sang in harmony with the wind, cities that grew rather than were built, and a culture based on collective consciousness and shared understanding. It was a civilization that had valued peace and knowledge over warfare and conquest, which had ultimately led to their downfall when the Zephyrians arrived. "They took everything from us," Seeker communicated during one of their sessions, its mental voice heavy with centuries of grief. "Our homes, our families, our very selves. They tried to make us forget what we were, to become nothing but weapons in their hands." Sarah felt the creature's pain as if it were her own. The human capacity for empathy, which many species dismissed as weakness, allowed her to truly understand what Seeker had endured. It wasn't just physical torture, it was the systematic destruction of identity, the attempt to erase an entire person and replace them with a killing machine. "But you resisted," she pointed out. "Despite everything they did, you held on to who you really are." The concept seemed to surprise Seeker. In Zephyrian thinking, resistance was futile and, ultimately, self-destructive. Assets that could not be properly conditioned were eliminated as defective. The idea that holding on to one's identity could be seen as strength rather than failure was revolutionary. As the ship continued its journey toward human space, the crew found themselves growing increasingly attached to their unusual patient. Seeker's intelligence was obvious, its curiosity about human culture endearing, and its quiet dignity in the face of past trauma inspiring. Lieutenant Rodriguez, initially wary of having an alien war beast aboard their ship, found himself bringing Seeker books and recordings of Earth's history and culture. The creature was fascinated by human concepts of individual rights, democracy, and the protection of the weak by the strong. "Your species is unusual," Seeker observed after learning about human involvement in various galactic peacekeeping efforts. "Most powerful civilizations use their strength to dominate others. Humans use theirs to protect." Ensign Kim spent hours sharing music and art with Seeker, discovering that Kithra culture had produced works of stunning beauty before their conquest. The creature's memories of harmonic crystal sculptures and empathic poetry revealed a people of remarkable creativity and emotional depth. Dr. Park's medical examinations revealed the full extent of the damage the Zephyrians had inflicted. Neural implants designed to suppress memory and emotion. Hormone regulators to increase aggression and reduce empathy. Surgical modifications to enhance physical capabilities while limiting cognitive function. It was a systematic attempt to transform a sapient being into a biological machine. "The worst part," Dr. Park confided to Sarah, "is how precise it all is." They knew exactly what they were doing. Every modification, every implant, every bit of conditioning was designed to preserve just enough intelligence for the creature to follow orders while destroying everything that made it a person. But the Zephyrians had made one critical error in their calculations. They had underestimated the power of hope and the strength that comes from connection with others who care. As Seeker's body healed and its mind began to recover from the damage inflicted by years of torture, something remarkable happened. The creature began to remember things the Zephyrians had thought permanently erased. Names of fellow Kithra who had been taken for the program. Locations of hidden facilities. Most importantly, the knowledge that some war beasts had maintained secret communications despite their conditioning, creating an underground network of resistance within the Zephyrian military. "They are still out there," Seeker told them one day, its mental voice filled with desperate hope. "My clutch sibling harmony beneath waves, the elder storm that brings wisdom, young starlight dancing on water. They survive, though the Zephyrians believe them fully broken." Sarah felt her heart clench at the names, each one representing a person stolen from their home and forced into servitude. The human crew had saved one Kithra, but there were dozens more still suffering in Zephyrian facilities across the galaxy. The weight of that knowledge led to long discussions in the ship's conference room. Earth Command would need to be informed, but the political implications were staggering. Humanity was still new to galactic politics, and challenging a major military power like the Zephyrian Empire could have serious consequences. But, as Sarah looked at Seeker, really looked at this magnificent being who had endured so much and still retained the capacity for trust and hope, she knew there was only one choice her species could make. Humans had never been good at ignoring suffering, even when it might be politically expedient to do so. The communication to Earth Command was carefully worded but unmistakably clear. They had uncovered evidence of systematic abuse and enslavement of sapient beings by the Zephyrian Empire. They had rescued one victim and learned of many others. They were requesting immediate assistance and authorization to mount rescue operations. The response, when it came 3 days later, was everything Sarah had hoped for and everything she had feared. Earth Command was mobilizing a task force to investigate the situation. Diplomatic protests were being filed with the Galactic Council. But, most importantly, they were authorized to continue their mission and gather more intelligence about the scope of the War Beast program. Seeker's reaction to the news was overwhelming. Through the psychic link, the entire crew could feel the creature's disbelief, hope, and profound gratitude. For someone who had spent centuries believing they were alone and forgotten, the knowledge that an entire species was willing to risk conflict to help them was almost too much to process. Why was all Seeker could manage to communicate at first. Why would humans do this for us? We are nothing to you, strangers from a distant world. Sarah's answer came from the heart, expressing a fundamental truth about human nature that had both saved and doomed her species throughout their history. Because you're in pain, and we can help. Because what was done to you is wrong, and someone needs to stand up and say so. Because if we don't help when we can, who will? It was a simple answer, but it encapsulated everything that made humanity unique in the galaxy: their stubborn insistence that suffering should be alleviated regardless of political convenience, their willingness to risk themselves for others, and their absolute refusal to accept that cruelty and oppression were simply the natural order of things. As the Prometheus continued toward human space with its precious cargo, none of them could have imagined the chain of events they had set in motion. The rescue of a single war beast would become the catalyst for a galactic incident that would reshape the balance of power among the stars. But, for now, in the quiet of the medical bay, Seeker was healing in more ways than one. Its body was recovering, its mind was remembering what it meant to be Kythera, and its spirit was learning to hope again. And, somewhere across the galaxy, other war beasts would soon discover that they were no longer forgotten, that help was coming from an unlikely source. The humans were coming, and, with them, the promise that no being would suffer alone while Earth's children drew breath among the stars. Earth Command's response arrived faster than expected, carried by the fastest courier ships humanity could deploy. The message was brief but carried the full authority of the United Earth Council: investigate, document, and prepare for rescue operations. More importantly, humanity's first contact fleet was being diverted to rendezvous with the Prometheus. Admiral Elena Vesquez commanded the fleet from the heavy cruiser Wellington, her weathered face reflecting decades of military service and the weight of the decision before them. She had fought in the Centauri border wars and negotiated the peace with the Syrian collective, but nothing had prepared her for the briefing materials about the Zephyrian War Beast program. "Captain Chan, I need you to understand something," Admiral Vasquez said during their encrypted communication link. "What you've uncovered isn't just a humanitarian crisis. It's potential evidence of crimes against sapient species on a scale the galaxy hasn't seen since the Harvester Wars 3 centuries ago." Sarah felt the weight of that statement. The Harvester Wars were ancient history to most species, a cautionary tale about what happened when one civilization decided others existed solely for their exploitation. The peace that followed had established many of the laws and principles that governed modern galactic society. "Admiral, Seeker has provided us with intelligence about 17 confirmed facilities where other Kythera are being held," Sarah reported. The locations span across 4 star systems, all within Zephyrian-controlled space. Some of these beings have been in captivity for over a century. Through their shared link with Seeker, the crew had learned the true scope of the War Beast program. Thousands of Kythera had been taken from their homeworld over the decades. Many had died during the conditioning process, unable to survive the psychological torture designed to break their spirits. Others had been killed in combat, thrown into battles where their lives meant nothing to their Zephyrian masters. But some had endured, holding onto fragments of their identity despite everything done to them. They survived in the hidden spaces of their minds, communicating through subtle psychic signals that their captors didn't understand. They remembered their true names, their families, their world before the darkness fell. The Zephyrian Empire has built their military expansion on the backs of enslaved sapient beings, Dr. Park added to the communication. Every major campaign they've fought in the last 2 centuries has utilized warbeasts. We're not just talking about isolated incidents, this is the foundation of their entire military strategy. Admiral Vasquez studied the data they had transmitted, her expression growing grimmer with each detail. The political implications are staggering. Half the Galactic Council has treaties with the Zephyrian Empire. If we expose this publicly, then maybe it's time the galaxy knew what kind of partners they've been making deals with, Sarah interjected, her voice carrying the moral certainty that had driven her to save Seeker in the first place. The rendezvous point was a system on the edge of human space, far from prying eyes but close enough to Earth's borders to provide security. When the contact fleet arrived, it was an impressive sight: 12 ships representing the best of human engineering and the determination of a species that had decided some things were worth fighting for. Seeker's reaction to seeing the fleet was one of awe and disbelief. Through the psychic link, the Kythera shared memories of the vast Zephyrian armadas that had conquered its homeworld, massive bioships grown rather than built, weapons that turned living beings into tools of war. The human fleet was smaller, but there was something about it that felt different. These ships were built to protect, not to conquer. "Your people truly mean to challenge the Zephyrian Empire for us?" Seeker asked, its mental voice heavy with emotion. "You would risk war for beings you barely know?" "We've done it before," Sarah answered honestly. "Sometimes being human means standing up for what's right, even when it's dangerous." The briefing aboard the Wellington was attended by officers, diplomats, xenobiologists, and military strategists. Seeker's presence dominated the conference room, its massive form requiring special accommodations. But, more important than its physical size was the weight of its testimony. Through the psychic link, Seeker shared memories that no amount of written reports could have conveyed. The officers experienced firsthand what it felt like to have your identity systematically stripped away, to be treated as property rather than a person, to watch others of your kind broken by torture and conditioning. Commander Sarah Mitchell, the fleet's intelligence officer, emerged from the session visibly shaken. "Sir, I've reviewed atrocity reports from a dozen conflicts, but this is different. The Zephyrians aren't just using these beings as soldiers. They're deliberately destroying who they are, turning them into weapons against their own will." Admiral Vasquez nodded grimly. "Which brings us to the question of how we respond. The diplomatic channels are already working. Ambassador Torres is presenting evidence to the Galactic Council as we speak. But diplomacy takes time, and every day we delay means more suffering for the warbeasts still in captivity." Captain Marcus Webb, commander of the assault cruiser Yorktown, leaned forward in his chair. "Admiral, I've reviewed the facility layouts Seeker provided. Most of these installations are lightly defended. The Zephyrians rely on their remoteness and the assumption that no one would dare challenge them. Small strike teams could extract the war beasts before they know what's happening." "And then, what?" asked Dr. Elena Rodriguez, the fleet's chief xenobiologist. "These beings have been traumatized for decades or even centuries. They'll need extensive medical and psychological treatment, not to mention a place to go once they're free." The question hung in the air, highlighting the complexity of the situation they faced. Rescuing the warbeasts was only the beginning. Rebuilding their lives and their sense of self would take years, perhaps decades. Seeker's input surprised them all. Through the psychic link, it shared an idea that had been growing in its mind since learning of humanity's intentions. The Kythera homeworld, devastated by Zephyrian conquest, was still habitable. Most of the infrastructure was gone, but the world itself remained. With help, it could be rebuilt. "You would return to your homeworld?" Dr. Rodriguez asked. "After everything that happened there?" "It is still home," Seeker replied, its mental voice carrying a complex mix of pain and hope. "The crystal forests can grow again. The singing towers can be rebuilt. We remember how things were before, and perhaps we can make them better than they were." The idea of helping to restore an entire civilization was both daunting and inspiring. It would require resources, time, and a commitment that would span generations. But, as Admiral Vasquez looked around the room at her officers' faces, she saw the same determination that had driven humanity to the stars in the first place. "We're not just talking about a rescue mission anymore," she realized aloud. "We're talking about reconstruction, about giving an entire species a second chance." "The Zephyrians won't accept this quietly," warned Captain Webb. "They've invested too much in the War Beast program to simply let it go. This could mean armed conflict." Admiral Vasquez considered this carefully. Humanity was still relatively new to galactic politics, their military untested against major powers. A war with the Zephyrian Empire would be costly and dangerous. But the alternative, allowing the continued enslavement of sapient beings, was unacceptable to human moral standards. "Then, we make sure we're prepared for that possibility," she decided. "But we also make sure the galaxy understands exactly what we're fighting against. Sometimes the best weapon is the truth." The first rescue operation was planned for the facility on Zirion 7, a remote outpost where intelligence suggested 6 warbeasts were being held. The site was chosen specifically because it was isolated and lightly defended, making it ideal for testing their rescue protocols. Seeker volunteered to accompany the mission, despite the obvious risks. Its knowledge of Zephyrian facilities and ability to communicate with other Kythera made it invaluable, but the psychological trauma of returning to such a place was considerable. "I must go," Seeker insisted when Dr. Park expressed concerns about the mission's impact on its recovery. "The others need to know that freedom is possible, that someone remembers who we truly are beneath what the Zephyrians have made us." The assault team was led by Captain Webb, supported by Marines who had been specially briefed on dealing with traumatized alien beings. Their mission parameters were clear: get in, extract the warbeasts, document everything they found, and get out before Zephyrian reinforcements could arrive. But, as they prepared to depart, intelligence reports brought disturbing news. Zephyrian fleet movements suggested they had detected increased human activity in the region. More concerning, communications intercepts indicated they were beginning to transfer war beasts from outlying facilities to more secure installations. "They know we're coming," Captain Webb reported to Admiral Vasquez. "If we're going to do this, we need to move fast before they can consolidate their assets." The decision was made to accelerate the timeline and launch multiple simultaneous operations. It was riskier than anyone liked, but the alternative was allowing the Zephyrians to hide the evidence and move the warbeasts beyond reach. As the strike teams prepared for departure, Seeker shared one final message with the fleet. Through the psychic link, it broadcast memories of its homeworld before the conquest, the beauty of the crystal forests, the harmony of Kythera society, the hope that such things could exist again. "This is what we fight for," Seeker told them. "Not just to escape from darkness, but to return to the light we once knew." The Zirion 7 facility appeared deserted from orbit, its biomechanical structures dark against the planet's barren surface. But, as the assault shuttles descended through the atmosphere, sensors detected the familiar signs of Zephyrian security systems and the unmistakable biosignatures of warbeasts in the facility's depths. Captain Webb's team moved through the installation with practiced efficiency, following the facility maps Seeker had provided. The architecture was disturbingly organic, walls that pulsed with alien circulation systems and corridors that seemed to breathe with malevolent life. They found the first war beast in a containment cell deep underground. The Kythera was smaller than Seeker, its blue-scaled hide marked with the scars of countless experiments. When the Marines breached the cell, the creature recoiled in terror, expecting more torture from its captors. But Seeker was there, its psychic voice reaching out with gentle reassurance. "Peace, young one. These are friends. The humans have come to take us home." The war beast's name had been Melody of Morning Rain before its capture, though the Zephyrians had designated it Asset 3387. Like Seeker, it had resisted conditioning and maintained fragments of its original identity. When it realized that rescue was truly possible, its emotional response nearly overwhelmed the human team through their shared psychic connection. They found 2 more Kythera in similar conditions, each one a testament to the brutality of the Zephyrian program. All showed signs of extensive experimentation, their bodies modified for warfare while their minds had been subjected to systematic attempts at identity destruction. But they had endured, and now they were free. The extraction proceeded smoothly until proximity alarms detected incoming Zephyrian ships. The Empire's response was faster than anticipated. 3 patrol vessels were approaching the system, their biomechanical designs recognizable from intelligence files. "Time to go," Captain Webb announced, but the rescued warbeasts were in no condition to move quickly. Decades of imprisonment had weakened them physically, and the psychological trauma of their captivity made them fearful of any change in their situation. Seeker took charge, using its psychic abilities to calm the others and help them understand that the humans could be trusted. It shared memories of its own rescue, the gentle care it had received, and the promise of freedom that awaited them all. The race to the extraction point was tense, with Zephyrian security drones pursuing the rescue team through the facility's corridors. The Marines' weapons proved effective against alien technology, but it was clear that future operations would face heavier resistance. As the shuttles lifted off from Zirion 7, the first rescue mission was officially complete. 4 more Kythera were free, their chains broken and their hope restored. But the approaching Zephyrian patrol ships served as a reminder that this was only the beginning of a much larger conflict. Aboard the Wellington, Admiral Vasquez reviewed the mission reports with mixed feelings. The rescue had been successful, but the intelligence gathered painted a disturbing picture of the War Beast program's scope. The Zephyrians had facilities throughout their territory, each one holding beings who deserved freedom. "Sir, we're receiving communication requests from the Zephyrian Patrol Commander," reported the communications officer. "They're demanding we return their stolen property and submit to arrest for violating imperial sovereignty." Admiral Vasquez's response was swift and uncompromising. "Tell them that sentient beings are not property, and that humanity does not recognize any nation's right to enslave others. If they want to discuss this further, they can address their concerns to the Galactic Council." The communication that followed was humanity's first formal diplomatic confrontation with a major galactic power. The Zephyrian commander was clearly unprepared for such defiance, having grown accustomed to other species' reluctance to challenge imperial authority. But humans were different, and that difference was about to reshape the balance of power in the galaxy. They had drawn a line in space and declared that some things were more important than political convenience or military strength. The war beasts they had rescued were being treated aboard the fleet's medical ships, their physical wounds healing while their minds began to process the reality of freedom. Through Seeker's guidance, they were remembering their true names, their histories, and their dreams of home. And, across human space, the news of their rescue was spreading. The images of Tort.